The wind dropped, and as you are trying to do a water start, but instead just drifting downwind, you start to think that light wind is probably something bad. But if one day you master low wind skills, you can rule the spot when everyone is waiting at the beach and even safely try a lot of new tricks. Hi guys! What light wind is usually associated with? Wind dropped right when you went far out in the sea. Let's have a brief look at this. The most common mistake that everyone does is trying to do a water start while the wind is obviously not enough for that. They keep fighting and bearing off downwind for hundreds of meters, trying to start over and over again while they could easily return to the spot by body dragging. If you are body dragging properly with your board, you can still stay upwind until the kite falls from the sky. It is much easier to do if compared to standing on the board situation. If you see yourself going downwind, do not fight. Stop, go down into the water carefully so the kite doesn't fall, and just body drag back. Push with your legs to swim upwind if you feel a gap in the wind and your lines are getting slack. Even if your kite dropped, remember you can still use it as a sail after wrapping up your lines, which is a part of a standard self-rescue procedure. Be sure to adjust the size of your sail depending on wind. Less wind you have, further away from the wingtip you move to increase the sail. You can still travel at least a half wind course with that technique. But light wind riding covers much more than body dragging. Many people lose the opportunity to kite more just because of using wrong stance. On the water, if you see that the wind is slowing down, switch to low wind riding stance. It involves using as much of board bottom surface as possible to make gliding more effective. So for low wind survival stance, place your board flat on the water. Load up your front foot as much as possible. Eliminate twisting of your body. Keep it straight. Use a bit of surfer stance. Rotate your back foot in a strap a bit, placing your back knee inside of your front knee. It will help to shift your weight even further to the front toe side tip of the board. Check out how front knee works. It stays more or less bent, absorbing the chop, since every small wave will reduce your precious speed and energy if you hit it with a straight leg. You will be still putting your weight onto the lines to keep the kite working properly on the edge of the window. Only when your lines have tension, your kite drives you upwind. Check out the episode on lines tension for more details why it happens like that. But you won't be edging your board to get upwind. Instead, you will be working with your back foot gently to point your board upwind using your fins. It feels like you are rotating the board on the surface, but it's important to realize that you are rotating it around your front foot. But remember, you should not using this steering with your fins technique when riding powered. The total area of your fins is not comparable with area of your board submerged in case of using a proper stance. You would often drive your kite in a figure of 8 motion to gain speed. Check out this. As the kite turns around at the highest point and you're losing power, bend your legs to momentarily reduce pressure on the board and avoid sinking. Straighten them again as the kite falls down, regaining power. And of course, don't forget that slower you go, more effective you go upwind. It happens because faster you go, more drag you have from the airflow, and your kite is moved further inside of the wind window, driving you more downwind. So to keep good upwind course in light wind, ride as slow as possible. I'd like to emphasize that from my coaching experience, a lot of people keep using the same stance as they would use for normal wind conditions. Furthermore, normal mistakes they make with normal wind stance become critical when it comes to low wind conditions. If you already checked my big video about jumps, where we mostly talk about the stance, you might notice that effective jump stance uses the same principles of using as much as board's length as possible. These are parts of a single philosophy that I want you to understand. loading up the nose of the board, holding proper body posture, loading up the lines. Talking about specific low wind steering, always try to work with your bar as far out as possible. Remember, if you shoot the bar in low wind conditions, the speed of the airflow often won't be enough to create sufficient lift, so your kite can go virtually beyond the critical angle of attack and backstall and fall from the sky. But the kite would often fall down anyway. Note that a kite trimmed for full power is a bit rounded since its tips are pointing to the center, so the canopy is catching less airflow. To make it easier in light wind conditions, depower your kite completely and grab your power lines to open the canopy and make your kite catch more air for easier relaunch. While piloting your kite at the beach in low wind conditions, also don't forget to avoid having the kite at 12. In case of a wind gap, the lines will get slack and the kite may dive and fall from 12 directly onto your head. However, if it stays on the side, you can steer it down to recover lines tension or even loop it to make it past the power zone, gain some energy and recover to 12. Note that it's better to pull the steering line instead of using your bar to have a low wind type of kite loop. Now let's talk about even more important part. What things you should try when the wind is light? Of course, first of all, different kinds of kite loops. And here we have to detect if the wind is low enough and safe enough to try kite loops. Different people will judge it different, so I'm offering you a universal solution. Run a quick test. Drop your kite down from 12 o'clock like if you would do a water start. If you're able to stand still or barely move following the kite, then the wind is really light and safe for practicing. To try looping a kite, you should choose a safe area, better knee-deep water with no obstacles downwind from you. Loop your kite from 12 o'clock, cranking the bar hard, and keep it like that until the loop is complete. Right after that, you definitely should try to do a kite loop water start. It becomes very handy in light wind conditions, since normal water start is very power demanding. Look how much drag your body creates while moving through the water to get into a riding position. Another way to fix this lack of power is to learn a beach start. Before you start, make sure that you can keep the balance on one foot. Use a bit of hopping if you've been driven to the side. While dropping the kite down, lean onto your lines, start riding, and then get the second foot into the strap. Running beach start is even more effective since you have some speed from the very beginning, just as you get onto the board. We will have a closer look on that in one of the next tutorials. Subscribe and stay tuned. Another power-demanding maneuver in light wind conditions is changing your tack, since you have a chance to stop and perform a water start again, so trying kite loop transition would be safe and useful at the same time. Check out two different options for this kind of transition. Down loop transition, which is more useful since the kite keeps traveling in the same direction when you change tack. And kite loop transition, when you steer the kite backwards before changing tack, and it is harder to perform. Since water surface in low wind conditions is less choppy, you have a unique chance to try some special riding styles like riding blind or even wrapped. We'll also cover that in more details in one of the next videos. To sum it up, I want to emphasize once again, principles of effective riding are like a necklace thread. They come through every kind of stance and riding style. For instance, engaging full length of the board works in both heavy conditions to resist the pull and in light wind to increase the planing area of the board. Bending front knee brings you into extremely powered up stance and at the same time helps you to preserve energy to ride when the wind is low. Proper upper body position helps you to load up your lines to keep the kite in the edge of the wind window for better control when you are overpowered, as well as to stay upwind when the wind is too light. So, pay attention to your stance and start getting better in every style of riding, starting from this important foundation. Thanks for watching and see you in the next episode.